Hello lovely people, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Janique, as we all know, and if you don't know, now you know. I promised last week that I'm gonna do a video breakdown of what to bring to the airport, also what questions I was asked at the airport when I came here a few years ago. If you haven't watched my what to pack video, then you definitely should. Right, so without further ado, let's get on with this video. Okay, so there's a various different documents that I recommend that you take to the airport with you. The visa officer may ask for them, sometimes they don't, but it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Wise in the man, wise in the man. It's given wise. Anyways, yeah, it's better to have it and not need it. I always say that, so go prepared. So any questions they have, you're ready to answer. Any documents that they want, you have it at hand to give to them. So the first thing you need to have with you when you come to Canada is your introduction letter. So your introduction letter is the letter you get when you send your passport to the embassy, and they give it'll go in your little portal, in your IRCC portal. Yes, that will come. I believe you get that once you send off your passport. Once they request the passport, you send it off, you get your introduction letter. So make sure you have that with you. Print that off, bring it. Don't just have all of these things, don't just have it on your phone. Please to print them and bring them. Okay, if you don't have a printer, go to the library. If you don't have a library close by, beg somebody to print it for you. Print them off. Okay, so that letter that you get when IRCC is like, hey girl, let me give you a study permit, yeah, here you go. That letter, bring it with you, your introduction letter. Second document, why have 4 fingers? What is the problem with me and counting? The second letter or document that I believe that you should have is your enrollment letter. That's the letter you get from the university or the college that you plan to attend in Canada. So I requested a letter from my college at the time, which was UPEI, the University of Prince Edward Island. I just requested that from the international office, and then I had that to show at the border. However, a few days ago, I saw in the international student group on Facebook that new students don't need their enrollment letter from UPEI. You could use your acceptance letter instead. You don't need a different enrollment letter. Your acceptance letter will count. But if you're a returning student that you went home and coming back for September, I believe you should get an enrollment letter. Yeah, and also if you're like a transfer student, I was a transfer student. I had to get an enrollment letter because I was attending virtually at first because of COVID, and then I came to Canada afterwards. So I got an enrollment letter. So check with your school if you need an enrollment letter and an acceptance letter. On to the acceptance letter. Number 3, have it anyway, even if you do need an enrollment letter. So still bring your acceptance letter. Make sure it's valid because some do expire. So make sure it's valid. If it's not valid, request another one. So yeah, even if you have an enrollment letter, still print off an acceptance letter, please and thank you, and make sure it's valid. Don't bring the expired acceptance letter. They're gonna think you're not going to the school. Another document that I think is good to have is your transcript. Now, this is something that I think is optional, and I brought my transcript because, like I mentioned previously, I was a transfer student and I was attending UPEI virtually before I came here. So because of COVID, we were online and stuff. So I was attending UPEI while I was outside of Canada. So I brought my transcript with me to prove that I was doing courses and I passed those courses and all of that I was going to school all along. Yeah, so I did that. But I don't think if you're coming as a new student where you're not transferring in anything, you don't need your transcript. But as a transfer that was attending school virtually, I brought mine. So that's optional. That's optional. So another thing, I don't have to tell y'all to bring your passport. It's common sense kind of. So bring your passport and make sure your passport have your ETA in it, or your visa in it. Your visa and your study permit are 2 different things, okay? You don't get your study permit until you get to the airport. When you get your passport request letter, and you send your passport to the embassy and they stamp it with that little, that nice little thing, that is your visa. That only allows you to travel to Canada. So make sure that's valid so you're allowed to board the plane, because if you don't have it, they're not gonna let you up on the plane. So make sure you have that. That's your visa or your ETA. And then when you get to the border and after you satisfy the officer that I am a genuine student, that's when you get your study permit, which is another document. It looks completely different. It's like a big paper. I'll put it on the screen. So your visa and your study permit are two different things. Don't leave the airport without your study permit. I was reading and some people did not collect their study permit before leaving the airport. Do not do that. If you were requested to do a medical before you came to Canada for your program, I know most programs like nursing or anything that you have to deal with, like the elderly or children or in the public kind of thing, you have to get a medical. And also it depends on the country that you're applying for, because at the time I was in the Cayman Islands when I applied for my visa, so I needed a medical. But usually Jamaicans don't need a medical, as far as I can tell. So if you need a medical, do your medical and make sure your medical is valid when you're entering Canada, because it only lasts for 1 year. It only lasts for 1 year. So if your permit took exceptionally long, like in my case, I did a medical and then my permit took well over a year to be granted. So my medical got expired. So I had to redo my medical in order to enter Canada. So make sure your medical is valid, and if it's not, redo it. This is the most important part of this video, in my opinion, and that's proof of tuition payments. So it depends on the officer. Your whole experience at the airport, it depends on the officer, but make sure you have proof that you paid your tuition. Now, I know at UPI, most people, you pay by semester. So you pay fall semester, then you pay spring semester, then you pay summer semester, right? I paid my fall semester because I was coming in fall. So I paid my fall semester in full, and I had that receipt to show the officer at the airport. Make sure you have that, okay? Because they might not ask for it, but if they request it and you don't have it, then that's gonna look, it's not gonna look good. And yeah, so to make sure you have proof that you paid your tuition. Please pay your tuition before you come. It's probably not a requirement for you to pay before you come, but I feel like it's the best thing to do. Yeah, I paid mine just before I came. After I got my study permit granted, I paid mine. And we here now. Please pay. For UPI, I don't know about other schools. You can go log on to My UPI. That's the name of the website, My UPI. And you can download your tuition receipt, and you just download that and print it off, and that's it. You don't need to email them and request it. Just download it and print it off and bring it to the airport with you. Like I said, make sure you print everything. Don't just keep it on your phone too, but make sure you print everything. Have like 2 or 3 copies of everything, even though I still have copies of things that I brought to the airport because I didn't use all of them. Yeah, make sure you have that. Also, your bank statements. Whoever is sponsoring you, whether that's yourself, your bank statements, your parents' bank statements, your uncle bank statements, whoever is sponsoring you, bring the bank statements with you. Bring a copy of the bank statements with you that shows that you have sufficient funds to last you in Canada. Because if they ask for it and you don't have that, then that'll mess up right there. So I know in some cases I've researched about people that were requested to log into their banking apps and show the officer that you have the money. That didn't happen to me. I don't know how I would have logged into my mother account, so thank God that didn't happen to me. But there's cases where they ask you to log into your bank account. So make sure the money that you say is there. Okay? Alright. You don't know what kind of officer you're gonna get. Now on to some of the questions that I was asked. These are all things that I was asked for. So yeah, my officer, he wasn't mean at all, but he was just more blunt, I guess, and he was like straight to the point. So yeah, I was like, hey, good evening. He's not my friend, but I was just like, good evening, because you greet people, but he was not having it. He didn't say nothing. He's like, blah 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 blah. Start asking me questions right then and there. I'm like, oh, yep. The important thing is to be prepared, because if you're not prepared, then I don't know what to tell you. Be prepared, because he asked me a lot of questions. He asked for a lot of documents, and I had them all on deck. Oh, you want this? Here you go. All right, here you go. Because I've come too far and I need my degree. So I'm gonna tell y'all some of the questions that I remembered him asking me. Like I said, these might not be questions that they ask you, because it all depends on the officer that you get. Sometimes they ask you a lot of questions, sometimes they ask you minimum questions, sometimes they probably don't ask you none at all. I don't know. But it depends on the officer, and these are just some of the questions that they asked moi. So one of the questions that I feel like is common that they ask when they do ask questions is, why are you coming to Canada? And that's where you tell them that you come in to study. Because why else are you coming to Canada? Or if you come into work, you come into work. Whatever permit you apply to, you know. So if they ask, why you coming to Canada and you coming to study, I am coming to study. That's it. That's it. You don't need to go in that bag of explanation. I'm here to study, sir. Sometimes my officer asked me what did I plan to study while in Canada, and I told him, you know, I'm here to study a bachelor's degree in business administration. At the time I was specializing in marketing, so put that all out there. So if you don't know the name of your program, I don't know where you're going. You should know the name of your program. Another thing is, what is your final destination, like what city you're going to or province. So, you know, if you come into PEI, tell them you're going to Charlottetown, PEI, or I don't know if you're going to Holland and you're going to like Summerside or whatever. Or if you're going to Halifax, so you're going to Halifax, you're going to Dartmouth, you're going to Dartmouth, if you're going to Moncton, you're going to Moncton. You know where you're going, so I should not have to tell you that. But whatever city you're going to, they might ask you where you're going, and that's an easy question. Another thing they might ask is about your school name and a bit about your program. I just mentioned, you know, I'm studying a bachelor's in business administration and at the University of Prince Edward Island, and that was that. I'm not sure if they sometimes want you to elaborate on your program to prove that you are actually, you know, what you say you're going to do, but that should be an easy answer for you. When it comes to financials, that was the main portion of my questioning with the officer. So he asked me about my tuition, if I paid my tuition, and I provided my receipts that yes, I paid for my tuition. And he also asked me about who's going to basically take care of me financially, who's sponsoring me while I'm in Canada, and my parents were sponsoring me while in Canada, and I had their bank statements printed off. He literally was flipping through them like this. Like, he was like, yeah, he was flipping through the bank statements, and then he was like asking me, oh, what's this? And I'm like, that's the name of the bank, you know, because they're not the same names as in Canada. So I guess he wasn't familiar with the bank, but I was just like, oh, that's just a bank in the Cayman Islands, blah blah blah. But he wanted to see that I have the money, you know. So I was like, yes, here's my tuition receipt that you asked for. He asked for the bank statements. Here they are, sir. That's that, you know, that's that. So definitely have those, because I feel like it's important to have them. Can you imagine if you say, oh, I don't have those with me, and then he's like, oh, log into your bank, and then you log in and you don't have the money there? Please to bring it with you. So those are some of the questions that I remembered that they asked me. I remember I was with him for quite some time. I traveled with a friend. I'm sure if you watch my Moving to Canada vlog, you see that I traveled with someone. She's in Dartmouth. And her experience was totally different from mine. She did not get asked all of these questions, you know. So once again, it depends on the officer. It depends on the officer, what mood you catch him in. He might dig up and ask you a bunch of questions, and they might not. And also, I know that if they request, like if they're not sure or they're not convinced of what you're here for or what you're about to do, or that you can support yourself financially, I know they'll take you like to a room and interview you further. Yeah, they'll put you to the side and interview you further. I also asked One of my subbies, actually, he recently got here in Canada. I haven't met him yet. It's so bad. I need to find some time and go meet with him. But I asked him, since he recently came in the last couple of weeks, what are some of the questions that were asked to him, and he provided me with some questions, so I'm gonna say them to you. So the first question is, some of the questions, he sent me more questions, but some of them were the same ones that they asked me, so I already told you that. And one of his was, how much money is he taking to Canada? And I guess he provided that information to them. Another one, what job does his parents do? The question is, who is sponsoring you? I think I got asked something similar with who is taking care of me financially, which was my parents. And, you know, if it's you sponsoring yourself, I'm self-sponsored. Or if it's your parents, my parents are sponsoring me. If it's your uncle, my uncle is sponsoring me. You know the vibe. The question he said he got was if he had a place to stay. Remember, Canada has a housing crisis currently, and in PEI, that crisis is just increased because it's such a small province. There's not a lot of, like, now they're building some new houses, but compared to the population, because a lot of people have moved here within the last few years, compared to the population, the housing is just not enough. I was reading up the news the other day, and PEI has a 1% vacancy rate. That means there's literally nothing. There's almost nothing here, okay? So I can see why they asked him that question. And, you know, if you don't have a place to stay and you have like an Airbnb, I guess you can say you're staying in an Airbnb for now until you find permanent housing. But hopefully you find permanent housing before coming to Canada, because I know just the other, like last semester, the university was posting a notice that if you don't have housing, do not come, because it's so bad. And they can't do much to help because they don't have the housing to give to you, and dorms are full. I know they built a new dorm, but I'm not sure when that's gonna be open. Probably this year, I don't know. The final question that he got asked was, what kind of food stuff is he taking to Canada? I know Canada is very strict on the type of food that you bring in, so please to make sure you check the restrictions and what is allowed and what's not allowed before you bring it to Canada, because they're probably going to just take it from the airport if it's not they're just going to take it from you at the airport if it's not allowed. So make sure you double triple check that it's allowed before you take it to Canada, and then you shouldn't have an issue. I hope this video helps somebody out there. If you watch this video and you think it might help somebody else, please share it somewhere, you know, just share it. And don't forget to give it a like, comment, and if you want to subscribe, I mean, I'm not gonna stop you. That's so cringy. That's cringy. All right. Okay, bye guys. Bye, and see you next week. Toodles. 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 Bye guys.